All right, we're just going to go ahead and get started, and as they trickle in, we'll let them trickle in and join us. So tonight we're actually going to be talking really about trying to get your investment home. Does anybody here own an investment home yet? You own one? Okay. Fun times. This should be a lot of fun then. So let's go ahead. What we're going to do is, first of all, I just want to welcome you to, coming out and trying to, get your first investment home. This is a fantastic journey, but it's not a journey without risk. And so tonight is really just trying to be an open conversation about how to make the most of the situation and then how to make sure that you mitigate risk at whatever level possible. Now there's three main models that we're going to be looking at tonight. We're going to be looking at the financial model, the client model, and then also the management model. And this is really more of a 101. We're not going to get into fix and flips and stuff like that. We can talk about that if you would like to. I'm certainly happy to talk about it, but it's not really where we're headed. This is really to just help you with your buy and holds so that you can get in and help set yourself up for success with the buy and hold. Now, hey man, this is really going to be designed for that conversation. And so tonight, as you're going through the process of thinking about your purchase and thinking about what you're trying to do, we're trying to remove as much risk as possible from this conversation because there can be a fair amount of risk going into this. And no matter how well you plan it, you just want to make sure that you mitigate it as best possible. So anyway, this is my information up here. You're certainly welcome. Everybody's got my emails, so I know how to reach you, obviously. But we would love to keep the conversation going and help you get where you need to go. So these are the models that we're going to be talking about, which is the client model, the financial model, and then the management model. And we'll do some math here in a little bit. Is it up there? Sometimes it skips. Okay. So we'll go through that and make sure that you have a good idea of what you're looking at. And then I'm going to provide you with some resources when we're done that you can actually download and you can actually help yourself with and build in. So here's a quick question. This will go to one of this is actually just for the fun of it. There's nothing here exciting, but if you want to take a photo of this and answer this for me, I would love to hear your answer. It's really kind of fun. It's kind of a wacky question more than anything. You have to scan the QR code though, so you'd have to do it with your phone. Oh, did it go out? Oh, now I'm wondering why you're looking at me like, what the heck's going on here? All right, so I'll re-up that up there and let's try it again. Sometimes this happens. I don't know why it doesn't like it, but we'll just keep moving. All right, share my screen. One 665. There we go. All right, that's probably easier now. Got a little QR code. And we'll go through the answer later, but it's really just, this is just a fun question right here. Just more of an icebreaker than anything. All right, while you're answering the question about this, we're just going to go right into the next piece right here in the first, and we're going to be talking about the client model. So the client model is actually one of the most important pieces of trying to help you get set up for success in buying your first investment home. And I can't accentuate this enough. There's usually two pieces to this that you really need to be looking at carefully because you don't usually get to pick, you get to pick one or the other. You don't get to usually pick both. You can choose right here, you can see you can either choose the cash flow model or the appreciation model. So sometimes it's easier to kind of put this into concept as you start talking about stocks. Does anybody here own stocks? Okay, and so if you bought stocks, for example, you have usually two different models of stocks, right? You can buy one that you're expecting to see go up and that you're going to be getting some really good dividends when you sell it at some point in time down the road. Maybe not dividends month to month, but when you sell it, you're going to have some equity in that stock that's going to be able to really turn into something, right? So that would be the appreciation model that you're seeing, or the cash flow model. The cash flow model, what that is it's slightly different, because what you're going to see with that is you're going to get a little bit more cash flow than what you would typically get on the other one. And let's just kind of put it into perspective. If you're going into a duplex, you got two units paying for the same house, right? So you're going to have a little bit better cash flow under one of those models than you would if you're buying a single family. Now, that's not in every case, but in most cases, a duplex is going to have better cash flow than you're going to find in a single family. The problem with a duplex is that duplexes don't appreciate as quickly or as fast as single families sometimes do. Now, that's not in every case, but in most cases, that's what you're looking at. And so, for example, in the last couple of years is an anomaly, because we saw some duplexes and triplexes down in the fan go up tremendously fast, and over $1 million in those, very quickly transforming the marketplace down there. And those, we saw the appreciation go up very quickly. But that's not extremely common with that type of property. And so, hello. Oh, no, you're great. Glad you came in. And so the cash flow sometimes is what you need. You need to kind of check it out, because in certain cases, as you start looking at your model, you're going to see how the cash flow might change depending on which client model you end up picking. Whether you're going to be going down the duplex model, whether you're going to be going down the single family. Within the single family models, there are some changes also within that single family model that can actually carry more cash flow or less cash flow depending on what you end up buying. So let's kind of jump into it real quick. And it's really coming down to what we call the client model is really, it's in a bell curve. And everybody knows what a bell curve is, okay? But there is the leading edge, there's the center, and then there's the back side of it, right? When we get into this client model that you're seeing here, is in the first third, or in the leading third that you see right here, this area right here would be probably your easier and more economical ones, okay? So maybe something that you're buying, it's kind of hard to find a house at 200 anymore, at least in this area. But if let's say you're buying something between 150 and 300,000, that's going to be more of your leading edge. But let's think about that leading edge a little bit. What are some of the characteristics of that buyer? They're kind of entry level at that point, right? And so they may be having a harder time putting rent together, right? They may have a little bit of job insecurities. They may have a few problems with, and the lower you go on that bell curve, the more likely you are to encounter a little bit more of that, right? If you're buying a $150,000 house down in Petersburg, what kind of client are you expecting to get? Are you going to have to chase them around to get money? You see what I'm saying with that? So you have to kind of think your client model through, because it's a really important piece to understand what that client model is going to do for you as far as what kind of property you're looking to buy. Now, I know people in this leading third right here that absolutely love this model. Here's why. It actually carries a lot of margin, because you're buying a house at a much lower price point, and you're getting a fairly decent rate of return on this. So you're getting a cash flow as you're going along. Now, what happens with Petersburg? Is it the next Google? You guys remember Google way back in the day when you could have bought it for nothing, right? Yeah, that was Church. You guys remember Churchill 10 years ago? Was Churchill kind of scary 10 years ago? Holy cow, yes. I remember walking into Churchill and going up to a client's house, and you guys know where that park is over by 28th? Right in the back there? Yeah, there's a park back over there. She was right up against that park. And I'm driving up, and I'm driving up to this single lady's house. I mean, just single lady's house. 10 years ago, up like 2013. And I'm driving up, and there's these people jumping somebody in the park. Like they're pummeling this dude. And so I get out of my car to help this guy. I'm like, I hope they don't stab me or kill me or whatever, you know, because it was that kind of neighborhood. And when I drove up to her house, which was right around the corner, I'm like, you're a visionary. I don't see it. You're a visionary. You're a visionary. I just don't see it. But I'm going to tell you that she bought that house 10 years ago for under $250,000. What is it worth now? It's crazy. And it was a really nice older home back at that point in time. So she made out fantastically well in that area, but she bought in kind of like the Google. Nobody knew it was going to happen. Nobody really understood what was happening. She bought in that leading third. Now she's living it. It's not as big a deal, but you got to remember that you're buying something that's a little bit more investment based. And so maybe Section 8 is a really good idea. I know some of you like Section 8, or maybe you're thinking Section 8. Now there is some great opportunities within Section 8 because it is regular and predictable. You're not waiting for them to show up with a check. The government's sending you that check. But they're not used to maintaining your property or their property. What are you going to get out of it in return? So everything better be concrete. You kind of get what I'm getting at. Is you kind of have to think through the model, because that leading edge model right there is going to play a huge factor in where it is that you want to go. Now, there are some wonderful segments within this. For example, there is a program with the VA where you can put veterans into some of these houses, and the VA will actually pay you, and they'll pay you by the room. That's a fantastic model. It really is. There is another segment of the demographic that works extremely well in this area too. It's not widely known, but we have a lot of undocumented workers in this country. Immigrants who are trying to make a new life in this country, and I totally get it. Let me just shut the door here, I'm sorry. We have a whole new section of immigrants that have come into this country that are looking for homes, and they can't get homes. They can't even get into apartments because you can't run their credit. They don't have credit. They don't have anything for this country. And those people do not want to get reported, do not want to get kicked out. They're living in the shadows, and they will take care of the house as if it was their own, because they don't want to create any waves, and they want to be well done. They're usually in this segment. So there are opportunities in there. I don't want to poo-poo the front segment, but you do need to realize what you're getting into, because it is not for everybody. Okay? I know one person here in town that he started off in this segment right here. Right now he owns over 300 homes. Put that math into gear. Let's say he's making $1,000 cash flow on each property on 300 homes. What would that do for you? That's a fair amount of money. $300,000 per month. That's pretty nice. But he also bought in this segment, and he traded out of this segment too and started 1031 exchanging these to be able to move into other segments, whether it was higher end residential or higher end commercial or into other things like that. Now, getting into the middle third, this is the third that I like to play in. This is where my rentals are. This is where my rentals are. Now, the characteristics of this is it does take me a little bit more money to get where I want to go. It takes a little bit more cash flow for me to actually get this thing done and get it happening. But I'm going to tell you that I don't have to chase anybody for a check. I really don't have to chase anybody for a check. They usually pay on time. They pay ahead of time. And I don't usually have a whole lot of problems with it. It's this segment right here is going to be in that 300 to about 450 range, okay, in that middle segment. Now, the great thing about that segment is you're no longer dealing with job insecurities. You're dealing with decent cash flow. But here's the problem, is you're putting more money into the property up front, so you have to have more cash to be able to make it happen. And the appreciation is still there, but it's a little bit more modest. Does that make sense? You're getting a little bit more appreciation on the properties. Now, that's not in every case, but once somebody knows there's a hot property around town, everybody wants it, right? Everybody wants to go there. So if I could have forecasted this person was a visionary back in 2013 when she bought in Churchill, I probably would have bought up an entire block, because I could have easily rented that out. I could have really seen some equity. That was going to be kind of on the edge between these two at that point in time, and I could have made something happen. Okay, so it's a great segment to be in. Some segments that work within this that you need to think about. College kids. Now, let me tell you what, that is not a perfect science. Because I did it to college kids and I ended up with beer on the ceiling. I had no idea that you could get beer on the ceiling. Obviously, I wasn't a very good college kid back in the day, okay? But they somehow ended up with a big splot of beer all over the ceiling, and they were only in there for a year and a half. They did $12,000 worth of damage in a year and a half. Yeah. And I made a mistake in how I handled it, and so I wasn't able to claim all but 5 of it. So it's actually something that you're taking a little bit of risk when you're doing that. But let me tell you what, mom and dad, they pay on time. They pay ahead of time. And I did all the research on mom and dad, and every single person that was living in my house owned a $2 million+ home. So I knew that there were resources. Now, I could have sued them for the extra $7,000 that I believe that they owe me for ruining my whatever it was, okay? But here's the problem with that. You're no longer dealing with small claims court once you get past $5,000. And guess what? Attorney's fees are only recoverable up to 25%. So you may win $7,000, but have it cost you $10,000 in attorney's fees. Does it really make sense? Okay, so there's risk with both sides of these. It doesn't matter where you're at. Here, I'm not having any problems getting paid. I just have to make sure that I'm managing these tenants in a way to where they have a high expectation that there's no baloney happening. Now, that's with college kids. The first tenant that you can actually get in here that's actually perfect in here is a lot of times you end up finding people who are in the medical profession who are just kind of stepping into this location. Before I get off of college kids though, did you know that there's a massive shortage of housing in downtown Richmond for college students? I don't know if you knew this or not, but they do not have enough housing for the University of Richmond, for VCU, or for, is it Virginia State? Is that the one that's down there? Virginia Union? Okay. There's not enough, and Virginia State's the one in Petersburg, right? They don't have enough housing there either. They don't have it. In fact, at one point in time, the college was actually offering to rent the rooms if you had a place to be able to put them. There's risk with that, but let me tell you what, the reward was amazing, because when I was doing college kids, the rent in my area, which is over by University of Richmond, down in the Tuckahoe area, right by Regency Mall, okay, the average rents down there were like $2,400, $2,500. I was getting almost $3,000. So I was getting $500 extra a year to actually help compensate for some of the damage, which it helped, okay, just to let you know it helped. But that's part of the pie, is thinking through that, okay? So looking for your demographic and understanding what your demographic needs is extremely important. Now, the doctors and other things like that, those guys coming out of medical residency, man, they're fantastic. So if you can get something around hospitals, if you can get things around, and there's another segment within this that we don't necessarily want to go into a ton, but there's the short-term rental. Now, I'm not talking about Airbnbs. That's another whole model. I'm talking about furnished finders. I don't know if you've ever heard of furnished finders or not, but furnished finders is fantastic. It's for traveling nurses, pilots, CEOs, other people like that. They tend to work well in this segment right here, in this middle segment, because they're looking for 3-month stay, 6-month stay. Highway workers, believe it or not, highway workers, if they're working on a bridge or there's something like that, they will ship people into a place and they'll actually and they'll have them stay at your place, because it's cheaper for them to pay. If I were to do that to this house here, I would get about $4,000 a month with that version. But I'd have to furnish it. I'd have to do, so there's more costs, there's more overhead, there's more things that go into it. But that is another model that works here. So keep in mind, you have more appreciation here, you have more cash flow here. In the center segment, you don't have as much appreciation, but you do have, and your cash flow is a little bit more reduced, but you're also protected because of the quality of the person that you're going to be renting to. Now, the third part of the client model is the lagging third, or the final segment over here. And now you're starting to get into that 600 plus market. And while that's a fantastic market, and everybody kind of wants to be in that market, you're kind of dealing with like a stock that doesn't have a ton of dividends, but hopefully we'll actually see some appreciation. Okay? Because here's the thing with this. If you have somebody coming to rent your $650,000 home, are they willing to put up with a stained carpet? Are they willing to put up with a toilet handle that kind of works? Are they willing to put up with a nail pop? No. So you're going to have a fantastic property here, but you're going to not get a ton of dividends. They are going to take care of the property fairly well, but your dividends, which is your cash flow month over month over month over month, is not going to be as good, but you are going to see property appreciation. And so here's what I mean. West Broad Village back over here, there are rents back here. They start at about $3,500 for the ones that are down in the corner. And as you work your way up in the brownstones, they're like $4,500, give or take. That's a significant rent. You go over to Wyndham, the rents are $4,500 to $5,000. Okay? Pretty significant rent. But they're not putting up with anything. They want everything fixed. They want everything perfect. And my son is in that category. So he's over in Wyndham, and there was a problem with irrigation, whatever. He couldn't get it turned on. They had to send somebody over to actually fix it and get it going. Because guess what? They don't want to lose their sod, right? And my son's not going to pay for the sod. So there's some things that have to get fixed and going a long way. Now, so just kind of think of your segments as you're going through these and the client model and as you're pulling this together. Now, there's a fantastic book that I'm going to refer to over and over again that I would highly encourage you to consider. It's the book Hold, H-O-L-D. Gary Keller is one of the authors of it. He owns Keller Williams. And I'm going to tell you that he has some fantastic insights in there that would really help you kind of think through how to pull all of this together. One of the pieces that he does is he has an investor criteria worksheet that I would highly encourage you to make sure that you're looking through and understanding. The main piece with it is that, yes, you want to look at these other pieces right here. If you're going into different segments, this will help you think through it, because if you're looking for a family to come in and rent your house, they're probably going to be looking for schools. And if you're in Godwin High, you're probably going to get a whole lot more than if you're in some other one. And so think through some of that as it plays in, but it's more than that you have to kind of think through, because if you're going into a neighborhood like this one, where it's a townhome, are you going to be able to recover the HOA? That's a huge question, because HOA in this neighborhood over here is between $300 and $500 a month, which is a big number. Now, they take care of a lot of things. Can you add it to the rent? That's a big deal. Wyndham has an HOA that's not as expensive. Can you add it in so that they can get the pool pass or whatever else? Is there a way for you to recover that? You really need to think through that, because that is compression, that shrink, when it comes down to what you're going to be finding with these. Some of the other things that you really want to get into when you're going along with it is also going to be, if you're dealing with the leading edge or the initial part of that middle segment, you want to make sure that they have access to public transportation. And that's actually a really big deal. It's a really big deal. And one other tip that I just want to let you know is, and I've heard this from several investors, does anybody here have gas in their house? Do you like having gas? You like having gas? Do you like having gas? Did you know it's actually really hard for a tenant to have 3 separate bills? I didn't know that when I first got my house, but they started getting late on certain things. And it was because there were 3 separate bills and they were used to 2, water and electric, water and electric. So think about it. I actually converted my house from gas to completely electric because of that. And it cost me about $800 to get a different water heater and to get it all set up. But it certainly made things a whole lot easier for the tenant, because they only had 2 bills at that point. Okay? Just something to think about. So this is to help you understand your opportunities and also the threats to your business model, is kind of go through and set yourself up as you're looking at the client, look at the neighborhood, look at the other things that are involved when it comes to that specific client model. Here's another question, if you just want to shoot that real quick. Another fun one here. And I'm going to pull up the answers to the first one. Go ahead. I know I'm a little random, but it is kind of fun for me to kind of see the answers. So let's see here. Here's my drive. All right, we'll move on. All right, so now we're going to talk about the financial model, which is pretty much trying to help you get set up for buying one of these investment homes. There are quite a few different ways to actually help you get into an investment home. We are going to talk mainly about the traditional paths, but sometimes you will find that it is necessary to use some alternative paths like hard money. And there's nothing wrong with a hard money as long as you understand the risk and you understand what it is that you're getting into. And so these are going to be some pretty important pieces like this. First of all, we're just going to start with the traditional models. Now, with the traditional model of financing, this is something that would go directly to Freddie Mac or to Fannie Mae. They are the most common versions of it, and actually they're considered to be very affordable, comparatively speaking, to anything that would be considered alternative finance. So alternative finance would be a hard money loan or a private loan of some form, or maybe getting a commercial loan or a fix and flip loan. Those are all really good opportunities to help you get into a house. But many times, if you can find something that's in a decent situation and it doesn't require a whole lot of lipstick to get clients in there right away, then this method is actually pretty good. It's actually, the interest rates tend to be better. And you also tend to find that there's more flexibility going to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae than there would be with other methods. Now, there's two versions of this that you can choose to do. And so this is if you're just going straight out and you're buying an investment home. So everybody owns a home. They're not planning on departing the residence they're in. They're planning instead on going into just buying, putting 15 to 20% down and buying that investment home and then using it. There is another method, I'm going to deal with it real quickly, where let's say you are living in a fantastic home, but you've outgrown the home and you would like to move into a new home and you want to change from where you're at and take a step up. That is actually an extremely common way. I have people who do that every 2 to 4 years. And so I have people who have bought 5 homes with me doing it with that method. They'll start off small. They'll start off usually with like a duplex. And then what they'll do is they'll move from the duplex into a single family. And then from the single family, they'll move into a larger single family. And then they'll move into a larger single family. If you go with a method like that, your down payment can be as little as 5%, which is actually pretty tremendous, as long as you feel comfortable with the payments. Because you got to remember that you're buying up, you can't go down, so you have to go up. So just keep in mind that if you're going in that path, if you're living in a $200,000 house, you're not buying 150, unless we really have a good reason as to why. But many times we can't explain that, so the underwriter is not willing to accept it because it looks like an investment ploy. Like, I'm buying a smaller house, okay, because I'm going to live in it, and that just, generally speaking, doesn't work. Now, there are cases where we have been able to do that because family situations change. What? Yeah. We run into that all the time, but I have very few empty nesters that go from 200 to 150. They go from 200 to 500, but it's just a smaller house. So, but yes, that is a concept, and I have done that before where there's a family situation that demands that. And so we certainly can get you set up with that. But on the traditional financial model where you're looking to buy through Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, you can get by with as little as 15% down. Now, the terms are not very good at 15% down. So while they are available, I'm going to tell you that if you can put, in fact, I just did one, I think with you this afternoon. We just did one at 15%. The cash to close was the same as 20% down because of the points and the interest rate and other things that get added to it to actually make that something that the banks will accept. So it's worth your time to go into the 20%. Now, the more you put down, the better your terms get. And so the last one that I did where they went from 20% down to 25% down, what ended up happening is the interest rate improved by over 0.5%. That's a big deal. Instead of paying points, which you're going to find at 20%, sometimes it's worth putting a little extra money towards the principal. And actually, because you're reducing the principal, you're increasing your cash flow, but you're also automatically reducing the interest rate. And so it's a nice play if you have a little bit extra money to do it. Okay? Not everybody was willing to do that, but that's certainly something that is available. When you get into multi-units for investment, it starts at 25%. And so if you're buying a duplex, triplex, quad, up to 4 units, generally speaking, it's 25%. Now, once you get past 4 units, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae no longer govern that type of loan, and now you're going into commercial. And so we'd have to set you up with some form of a commercial setup with that. Now, here's the great thing about this, and this can be used regardless of if your departing residence is being converted to a rental or if the new home that you're buying is going to be a rental. We can actually use the projected rent to offset the mortgage. That's fantastic, because that means that if your monthly payment is $2,000 on this house, but you can get $2,500 in monthly rent, we can use that as income to offset that payment. Which means that in essence, you're not really carrying a payment, you just have to come with the cash to close. That's a really good deal. Now, in order to do that, we actually have to do one additional step, which is we have to get the appraiser to do what's called the 1008 rent schedule. And the 1008 rent schedule, what we're doing is, in essence, we're saying what are the market conditions for either the departing residence or the residence you're looking to buy, and what would the market rate be for these? And the great thing about that is they go and they give us a number for that, and it usually works very well. Now, there is a little bit of a loophole on the departing residence, because if you're doing it on the departing residence, if you have a lease before closing, I can use that lease and I don't have to pay an appraiser $150 and pass $150 on in order to actually do that. I just use whatever lease it is that you give me. Okay, so this is a really good piece. Now, with this, you can also get some seller concessions, meaning that if you negotiate the project well, you can actually get the seller to give you 2% of the purchase price back to help you cover either points, prepaids, closing costs, whatever else it is that you can do. Now, I want to temper that, because we're not in a market where there's a whole lot of concessions right now. And so while it is something that you can do, it's not something that is commonly available right now. Okay, at least not in this part of town. I have seen where I do serve some areas that are a little bit more rural, and those rural areas are seeing some concessions between $5,000 and $10,000 towards closing costs, but I have not seen a whole lot of that in this area. Okay. There are other alternative programs that you can use, and so let's talk about those real quick. I don't have a slide for those, but the alternative programs, let's say you found a house that's in perfect shape that you really like to get, or not perfect shape, it needs a little bit of love and lipstick, and you just want to buy the house, and you want to get it, but you don't have cash to be able to pay $250,000 cash, but you have enough for the 20% down or something like that. There's a couple different types of loans that are available. There is a renovation loan that you can actually use that will give you the money to be able to buy the home, renovate the home, but you have to keep the home. It's not a fix and flip. That's a separate type of loan. It's a renovation loan designed for that specific type of scenario. That one does fall under Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. It will work. It will work in most cases, but not every lender has that one. Okay, so you do need to be a little bit more asking questions about whether it works, whether it doesn't work, whether it's available or not available. For example, that specific one, I don't have that specific one right now. We have it coming. We should have it this fall, but I do not have it in this exact moment. There is another one that you can do, which requires a little bit more legwork on your part, and that it would be getting some form of either private money or a hard money loan. The private money or the hard money loan, what those are is an individual saying, hey, you need $250 to buy this house. I'll give you $200 and you put your $50,000 into it. I'm going to go ahead and take care of it for you. Here's what the cost structure is with it. Now, here's what you need to know about hard money loans. They're fantastic ways to help you get in the door, but more risk, more reward. The more risk the lender is taking, the more reward they're going to be expecting. And so what that means is that if they're lending you $200,000 of their private money to help you get this house, they're going to be expecting probably 200 plus whatever their closing costs and fees are at the end, plus an interest rate. Usually it's interest only, interest rate of between 10 and 14%. So just keep that in mind, but it is considered to be a very short-term loan, meaning that they want you to repay them within 6 months. So if you can't get it done in 6 months, you need to make sure that you're negotiating correctly up front with that one, because you may need an alternative method to get you in the door, okay? There is another loan that is available that is called a DSCR loan. And I'm just going to briefly touch on the DSCR loan. It is not for renovation, but it's for that investor who really has found what they really want, and they have a perfect mind's eye of what they want to accomplish, but they're not financially set up in a way that actually works extremely well for them at that moment in time. It means that they have the cash, but they can't prove their income is enough to be able to support it. So what a DSCR is it's a debt service coverage ratio. So what that means is that if the rent is equal to the payment, that's all the bank cares about. Here's what that means. You have a $2,000 payment, your rent is $2,000 or greater, you qualify for the loan. Works great. Now, in what cases would something like that work? None that come to mind, right? Here's where it works. Short-term rentals like that, or that one that we're talking about, there's risk with it, right? But if you're getting $4,000 a month, that's your plan, and you can justify it, it makes sense. I have people who do that all the time. Another one that works very well with something like this is group homes. You wouldn't believe the group home vibe that will scoop a home up just to make something like, they're renting each room out for $800 a room. If they can get 5 rooms, think of the cash flow on that. That's amazing. So there are strategies that do help you with these types of investments if that's really where you would like to go. But just keep in mind, they're not considered traditional. There is more risk on your part. The bank is going to ask for more reward because of the risk, but it's not necessarily a bad way for you to get going, okay, if that works. I would highly encourage you, though, to start with a traditional means before you start going down some of the alternative means, just to get your sea legs underneath you and help you get set up, okay? Because when I got my first rental going, I'm going to tell you that I was pretty skittish for the first 2 years. I'm actually feeling pretty comfortable with them now, but I don't know as I would be willing to go crazy and go all out. And there's some investors that are extremely savvy with this, that are willing and have a whole lot more tolerance for risk than I do. I worked very hard for my money. I don't want to, you kind of get that, right? I want to make sure it's preserved, and I'm okay with 8 to 10% interest, return on investment. I don't necessarily need 40 or 50 like what they're doing. At some point I may change my mind on that, but right now that's where I'm at. All right, so in the cash flow analysis, there's a couple ways for you to do some of this analysis ahead of time to help yourself, to help understand how to set yourself up on these investments. Now, if you have a trusted realtor, you can lean on your trusted realtor to help you with these as well, because they have access to some data behind the scenes that may be able to help you. But if you don't have access to this data through them, or you don't have somebody that you're leaning on, this data right here, this is actually how I found the rental value of the home that I was in, that I bought, is I went ahead of time before I started looking at properties. Realtor.com, Zillow.com, both have a rental page where I can go and look and see what rentals are available in the areas that I want to buy in. And the area that I wanted to buy in was in the Tuckahoe, over here by Regency Mall area. And so I looked at that strip and I did my own analysis. I wanted a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,200 square foot. What is that renting for? I don't want apartments, I want single families. And I started looking around the area to see what I could find. Very little data because there was very little at the time, but it gave me a really good perspective of whether that house that I was looking at was actually worth my time or not worth my time. And I'll give you, there's a resource later that I'm going to show you, that I'm going to give you, that you can have access to, that's a spreadsheet where you can actually do some of the math yourself. But this actually right here helped me out a ton, because I was able to go to Zillow.com, the rental section, and Realtor.com, the rental section, and actually pull it up. Now there's another way you can get into Rentometer or BiggerPockets. They do have some calculators in there. Rentometer is actually pretty cool, but it is a paid for subscription. So you get the first one free, but then after that you have to do some other ones. You have to pay for it. But if you're a serious investor and this is really what you're looking at, this is not a bad thing, because what happens is you put the address into the home that you're looking at, and it'll spit out on a gauge what your range is as far as what you can pick up and what you can use. So this is actually a pretty good piece with the financial model, and you really want to do your analysis on the numbers. What numbers are important to you? Are you looking for appreciation? Are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for a mix? You're not going to get a wide range on either side if you're picking the model like I am, like that middle model, that middle segment. You're not going to get a huge appreciation. I'm not going to get a huge cash flow, but over time I can. Okay? In my model, the way I'm trying to do it is I'm trying to get these homes and have them paid off in 15 years. Because if I can get them paid off in 15 years and I can cash flow $3,000 a house, guess what? That's actually pretty cool. And there's nothing as sexy as paid for, just to let you know. Nothing as sexy as paid for. It's pretty awesome. So this is pretty cool. So these are some good ways to help you actually decide whether the financial model on that specific house is going to help you. Now, the next thing you need to do, and I'm going back to the book Hold, is this is the property analysis worksheet that you need to work through. Now, I put this into Excel. It's not perfect. You can download it from my website. I'll show that to you later. You can get in and download it. But this actually helps you determine what your cash flow is on the property and whether it makes sense to buy this property or not buy this property. Now, if you're better at Excel than I am, then I would just take this sheet right here and turn it into an Excel sheet for yourself. Because this right here, I'm telling you, it will help you within, if you get the numbers right, within literally 3 clicks, it'll put out every single number that it is that you want. Okay, and I'm going to show you, I went ahead and put this together, and I'm going to put it in, I'm going to go ahead and go there real quick so you can kind of see what I mean by it. And here's my website, by the way, Parks Mortgage Group. If you go to the resources tab right here, and you scroll down, you can see I've got resources for first-time home buyers, for veterans, in Spanish, and then right here is the investor one. And you can actually hit that download button, and you can see there's construction too. Hit the download button, it'll ask you for some little information, and then you'll have access to the Google Drive that actually has all of this in it. And here, this is the drive that you'll actually get access to right here. And then this is the hold sheet. And so coming in, it's not a perfect sheet, but I did an analysis for somebody on S Street, and they were buying it at $599. They were putting in 25%, which was $149. Here were the closing costs. Here were the escrows. Here's what they were paying in points. Here's what their mortgage payment was, including some of this you have to manually do. So just to let you know, my Excel sheet's not perfect, but it does work. And then annually, that was my cost. So that was my hard cost for this property that this person was looking to buy. Now, they were able to get $1,050 in rent for unit 1, $1,175, $1,200, $1,200, which added up to $46 per month, $55 per year. Their total cash in ended up being $175,217 with an appreciation rate annually of 4.5%, which is the average nationally over the last 20 years. Okay, 2009 wasn't friendly to that, but if you average in what just happened in 2020, 2021, where homes skyrocketed, and you go back prior to that, it's 4.5% annually. This year, even with interest rates, last year with interest rates being at almost 8%, it was 4.5% last year. Pretty amazing stuff. This year, the forecast is between 4.5 and 5%. Interest rates are expected to come down. And here's an interesting statistic that I just found out. For every 1% that the interest rate drops, it opens up 5 million new buyers because of affordability. Now, they're expecting the interest rates to progressively trickle down over the next 18 months to be in the high 5s, low 6s. That's a full percentage point from where we're at. So you need to decide how much competition you're willing to face before you're getting ready to buy a house. Okay? And that's an important fact that you just need to kind of play with. And it doesn't matter if you have I'm telling my kids to buy a house because it's that important right now. I'm telling them, I'll help you buy a house. I don't care what it takes. We're buying you a house this year. Because once this hits, and I can go through the demographics of everything, it's going to make housing that much more unaffordable. It just is. The demand outpaces what we have as far as inventory. Anyway, in this specific one, the average appreciation means next year this house is going to be worth $26,000 extra. It also means that if I take into a depreciation model, because you can depreciate this is one extra advantage that stocks do not have, is you can depreciate it against your earnings and actually help you retain more of your money. Okay? The depreciation is $11,500, and I end up with reserves after the year is over of $11,640. My cash on cash, in other words, the return on investment of this number right here, the 175 that I put in, my return on investment, cash on cash, is 6.64%. That's not bad. That's not bad. But that's just cash on cash. That's dividends. So if you have Google, that's like getting that check in the mail, or you have, it doesn't matter which bank it is, or what stock it is. You know that little dividend piece that you get. That's what that is. You're getting 6% in just pure dividends. Now, in this case, the first year return on investment is actually 28%. By the time you take in the appreciation and you take in the depreciation, now all of a sudden your return on investment's actually gone significantly higher. Is it still up there? It is still up there. Okay, I panic sometimes. All right, so that's actually a pretty good statistic because we don't think of some of that stuff. Is it money that you can cash in tomorrow morning? Probably not. If you went to a realtor tomorrow morning and said, I want 28.25% more for my house, would you be able to get it? The answer is no. It's a long-term hold. But having said that, between the taxable benefit and also the depreciation benefit on your taxes, it is 28%. So that means that you actually end up reducing your taxes down to actually help you with purchasing this home, and it gives you not only stability of the income of 6.6% that's coming in the door, but it gives you that appreciation that you have long-term as well. All right, going back to here. So this financial model, you just saw that. You can go to the website, you can download it, it's all free. I'm not trying to get it. Here's the long version that I started with. This one's extremely complex, the other one's a little easier. But if you're good at Excel, I'm all for you building it. You can send it to me. I'll tell everybody else about it. Okay? All right. All right, one more question for everybody to jump in at. And
good questions, yeah.
Somebody here should know the answer to this.
yeah, you're getting to know me a little bit better now. All right, here's the game responses. Oh, that's a different one. I have a couple games. That's not the one. All right, I'll come back to it because I don't find it. So anyway, let's talk about the next model. How to manage your rental. This is where it feels scary, right? Anybody ever feel a little anxiety when you talk about managing rentals? It can feel really scary. And quite frankly, it is scary. It is scary. Because you don't know who you're picking, right? But let's find a way to get the best we can out of it and try to mitigate as much risk as we can. And so here's how we can do this. And so you can choose to do professionally managed, which is not a bad idea, by the way. Professionally managed actually works extremely well. I was just referred to a professional manager. They charge 10% of whatever your rental is. That's not necessarily bad because you don't have to deal with it on a daily basis. But let me tell you something. I'm in that middle segment of people renting, right? That little middle edge kind of thing. I got 3 calls in 2 years. Why? Because what I did is I went through the house before I got a renter in there, and I treated it as if it was my house. I replaced the dishwasher, I fixed this, I painted that, I did this other thing, okay? And I made sure that the house was in good shape when I was done. Now, it feels a little awkward sometimes to be the landlord because you're not used to being tough, right? And you just get this idea that somebody's going to clog your toilet, and then they're going to let that thing go all over the house, and then they're going to do this, and it's, yeah, the college kids, $12,000 of repairs. It wasn't very fun. I lost my religion several times. I really did. I lost a lot more than just that several times. I had to repair holes in the wall, beer on the ceiling. It looked like they took a utility knife to my floor. Yes, it was very hard. But let me tell you what, I only got a certain amount of calls, and quite frankly, the money that I got I got a higher deposit, and I got some money additionally back from the parents. Did it make me entirely whole? No. But I didn't lose money, and I still have equity in that house, and it's still paying down the bills, and it's still making things go. So you have to think through this on whether you want this or not. Professionally managed, there's nothing wrong with having a professional manager. If you're just like, heck to the no, I don't want to deal with it, I don't want it, that's fine. You're still paying for the maintenance man, whoever that is. You're still paying for the attorney if you need one. You're still paying for other things. They're just going to manage that client for that period of time. So if your rents, like we saw in that last one, was $55,000 for the year, what's 10% of that? $5,000 and change, right? Is it worth $5,000 for you? In some cases, heck to the yes, I don't want to deal with it. But sometimes it's like, whew, $5,000. That's a nice part-time job. That's a nice gig. I could probably figure that one out, which is what I attempted to do. Okay, so you're still, they're handling this for you. They have their own network of people to help you. Okay, that's the hard part of being the owner, is having a network of people that you can rely on. Because when I need a plumber, I don't know a plumber. You know, I know a plumber, but he doesn't know me. I'm not even like a date to prom at this point. He's married to some builder, and he's going to be working with his builder forever. You know, if I call him, he might get me in 2 weeks, right? Kind of like your doctor, right? If you want to see a doctor, how long does it take? At least 2 weeks these days, right? Okay, so you kind of get the idea of what I'm getting at. The hard part of managing it is surrounding yourself with a network of professionals that you need. I am going to tell you that the most important person on this professional list is going to be a decent handyman. If you have a decent handyman who can repair basic plumbing, basic electricity, drywall, painting, stuff like that, everything else is simple. You need a basic handyman. If you can feel comfortable doing this, I would highly encourage you to get a solid contract. If you know a good realtor and you have a really good relationship, they have a phenomenal contract in the Association of Realtors. Really good. Buy it from them, pay them off, do something like that, get that contract from them, or go to an attorney and do the same thing. Okay, something like that. You need to figure out a point of sale. We're going to talk about this in a second. How are you going to collect money? Right? Do you really want them showing up to your door? Do you really want them to say it's lost in the mail? Okay, so how are you going to collect your money? This is extremely important. If they don't pay on time, how are you going to get recovery? I just talked to a friend of mine who's a realtor. She just bought her first investment home 2 years ago, and the renter decided to stop paying 6 months in. And it took them 8 months to get the renter out. And the renter has not paid in 8 months, and the renter trashed the home. Now, they were in that leading edge. They bought a home that was in that 150 to 200 at the time. They were in that leading edge. Okay, that doesn't mean that I won't get it in the middle, but that their opportunity for that was a little bit higher on the backside. You see what I'm saying? How are you going to handle collections? Because once again, if you go to court and you sue this person and you win, yay, you won. How are you collecting it? Because they're not going to show up with a check. If they couldn't make a rent payment, they're not going to show up with a check tomorrow morning to make this happen. You see what I'm saying? And so think about it from the standpoint of no different than your computer, garbage in, garbage out. If you're putting bad people in, you're going to have a hard time getting them out. Okay, so doing the best you can up front is extremely important. So point of sale collections, maintenance requests, handling that. I got a phone call from the college kids. You're going to love this. I got a phone call from the college kids. Standard water heater is what, 60 gallons? Right around there, 60-gallon water heater. Do you know it only takes 20-minute shower to get rid of all the water in one of those things? My tenant found out, and he called me and says, I don't understand why I can't take a 25-minute shower. Well, I'm like, okay, well, the average shower head uses 3 gallons per minute, and you're in there 25 minutes, you've used 75 gallons. You're out of hot water. So anyway, that's a fun one. But maintenance requests, tenant communications, turnover inspections. This is huge right here. In and out, in and out, in and out. You have to have good paperwork for in, and you have to have good paperwork for out. Because otherwise, there's no tracking. There's no tracking. Good paperwork in, good paperwork out. It's probably a good idea to follow up with a bunch of pictures to make sure you know what you have going in so that you know what you're doing when you're getting out. Okay? Turnover inspection's huge, and then a network of vendors. We talked about that real briefly. If you feel comfortable handling this, you'll do exceptionally well with your rentals. That's why I suggest that you kind of tiptoe your way into this, because this can take a little bit to feel comfortable with. Okay? Now, I have been able to pull that off, and I'm going to show you how I've done it, and you guys can decide how you want to pull it off from here. So, professionally managed, there's real estate agencies that you can pull from. There's some online entities that you can pull from. Local management agencies that all these people do. A lot of realtors do that professionally full time. So you could go to them and you could talk to them and have them manage it for you. If you do self-managed, you can't. These are some good ones. If you're getting into a lot of properties, these are some good places to go. Personally, I don't use any of these. Okay. Because there are some free resources. Everybody like free? Okay, here's my free resources. Zillow Rental Manager, apartments.com. They're free until you have 10. And once you have 10, you have to pay for it. But let me tell you something, they work really good. Now, why do I use 2? Zillow Rental Manager everybody's been on Zillow, right? Is it pretty cool to kind of surf through Zillow? Yeah, you're getting a lot of data. Not all of it's extremely accurate, but you are getting a lot of data, right? Some pretty decent data at that. Well, Zillow Rental Manager gives you that data. And if I put my listing on Zillow Rental Manager, when they apply for the listing, they have to pay $25, not to me, to Zillow, and Zillow pulls their credit and sends me the report. And I get everything. Do they have any serious crime? Have they ever been evicted? Do they have any collections? You see what I'm saying? What is their credit? What is their debt ratio? Zillow gives me all of that. This is actually pretty doggone cool. Because when it can be a little overwhelming, okay? Because homes for rent the first weekend I rented my one house, I had 28 applications. How do you go through these? No idea. But 28 applications was actually pretty simple because I was able to sort them by credit, and then I was able to drill down into them and decide which ones I wanted to communicate with and which ones I wanted to push a button on and say I don't want to deal with. And that's all I had to do is push a button, say I want to do it. Now, I tried the same thing on apartments.com for vetting the client. Not as clean. Not as clean. Really clean right here. Now, if you wanted to use Zillow for the whole thing, you could. But their platform, in my opinion, for communications, for contracts, other things like that, is a little bit stale. It's not as cool. But apartments.com, for managing the client, is really good. I mean, it's a really nice portal. I can upload documents to it. Everybody gets to see them. I can upload, for example, with my college kids, they want me to keep the utilities in my name, and they'll pay me, which I'm okay with because I've told them they signed a separate addendum saying that if they're in my name, they're paying $50 extra for me to manage it. Okay, so every month I get an extra $50 to bill them for their electricity and water. Okay, I add a bill right there, and if they don't pay it on time, it sends me a message. I get to tell them when I want it done, and if they don't pay me on time, I can go in and add a late fee to those right there. Now on rent, I usually give them until the 5th of the month. They have until the 5th of the month to pay rent. And if they don't pay by the 5th of the month, my contract with them says that they're going to have a $250 late fee. Guess what happens at midnight on the 5th? If they haven't paid, they got a $250 late fee the next morning. And the only thing that they can say is, oops, I forgot, because apartments.com doesn't have outages. There's no outage. It's not like it's lost in the mail. It's there, and you can go and see if they had an outage. It's really cool because there's no excuse at that point. You either did or you didn't. And I've only had it happen a couple times where they've had to pay, but it's actually pretty cool because I can say, I'm sorry, there was no outage. Because if you let them slip just that much, guess what's going to happen? It's going to continue to erode. So you have to be really careful with it. You don't want to be an a-hole about it, but you at the same point in time, you need to make sure you're holding the line. Okay, so I would encourage you, if you are going to do your first rental, if nothing else, it is free. Set up in a profile, go look at it, see what happens and what you want to do. Now, when you get ready to list on this right here, don't take iPhone photos. Don't take iPhone photos. Get a photographer. It'll cost you $200. It's worth every penny. The reason why is because you're going to get a higher quality client. You're going to get a higher quality tenant, and it's completely worth your time. Now, I know it's expensive, but you can write that off too, okay? You can write that off on your taxes, but do get professional photos. It's worth it. It really is worth it. I had somebody who liked it so much they weren't a leading candidate that they offered to sign a 3-year lease because the photos were so good. That was pretty awesome. I ended up going with somebody different, but not because they weren't a good candidate, but because I had 28 candidates, of which 10 were very, very good. It was very hard to compete at that point. And then as we wrap up, you're here because you already know this. You want to build wealth through real estate. You really do. You want to make things happen. And this is a great way, whether you want to be the Donald or you want to be just you and have 2 or 3 extra rentals to help you in retirement. It doesn't matter where you're at. This is a fantastic way to help you get into real estate and actually help you leverage your funds and build a portfolio. And it helps you diversify too, because when the stock market's down, everybody needs a house. Everybody needs a house. This is a great way to diversify your portfolio. It doesn't mean you stray away from stocks completely. It just means that it's another way to actually help you get set up for this. And then this is my YouTube channel. This is going to end up on YouTube. You don't have to subscribe, but I would be honored if you did. And I put information on here, a lot of shorts. This is going to be one of the long forms I put in there. Love to have you join me on YouTube if you'd like to. I usually get a lot of trolls, so if you can help me get past them, it'd be kind of fun. The way I work is very different than most. You're actually seeing how I work. I do a lot of these things right here, a lot of these events, a lot of these classes. I actually have another one of these with a whole different realm on Friday. We have 32 people that have RSVP'd for it already. I'm expecting another 10 people to show up on Friday, and it's a realtor-centric one. So my whole goal is really to walk hand in hand with my partners and with people who really are of like mind. And I work entirely by referral. I'm not cold calling people. I'm not trying to put you in a head press and try to get you to sign on the dotted line. This is really me just trying to serve and help you be successful with what you're trying to accomplish. And with that, if I've helped you accomplish the goals that you're trying to accomplish, I just hope that you'll refer me people just like you. That's it. That's all I'm looking for. Because I want to work with people who like to work with me and people that I like to work with. That was a lot, wasn't it? Anyway, you kind of get the idea. But that's it. And you've already seen the resources. This is to my website. You don't necessarily have to go there again, but this is to my website where you can download the resources for my information. Oh, we want to go back. Okay, there's the resources tab again. And you can download anything you want from there. It's real simple. Just ask you for your name and phone number, and you can download anything that's in those portals. So, any thoughts? Any comments? Any snide remarks?
Good stuff. I appreciate all the on the website with mentions, things, resources to check out. A lot of things I haven't heard before.
Oh, good. Yeah, trying to be a resource to help you. Any other thoughts? Okay.
When you touched on the DSCR amount, it was interesting to me because prior to reconnecting with you for the property I want to get, another lender tried to, he approved me for a DSCR loan. And, and I was curious why, but I really don't even know why at this point.
So the DSCR is like the golden child right now. People think that's like the best thing ever because I don't have to do. I pull your credit, and if the rent works, that's all I have to do. But it really doesn't work for most investors unless you're doing those hybrid approaches like a group home, or you're going to do that short-term rental, or you're going to do like the beachfront ones. The beachfront one is actually a really good place to use a DSCR because you can get one out at the Outer Banks. I have people in the Outer Banks who have bought homes there that get $70,000 in rent in 3 months. That's fantastic rent. Okay, and a DSCR loan is an ugly loan because it's usually at 10 to 14% interest. It's expensive. It does have prepayment penalties. It's not for everybody. But it is a loan in that case. If you didn't have the income, in other words, all you're doing is working on rentals and you're writing everything off, that's the only way you're buying one.
Do you typically need a 20% down payment?
Yeah, it's a 20% down loan. Yeah, it's not, if this is your first rental, I would try to steer you away from it. Not because it's not a good loan, but because it's not to your advantage. So, okay.
I just have a quick question. I guess maybe this is more to like strategies, but like, when you have options over the terms of the loan, like the length of the loan, do you like opting for the longer loan to get more cash flow, the shorter loan to get the house paid off more quickly?
There's a couple, there's a couple rules of thought when it comes to that. Personally, I have a 30-year loan on mine, but I'm accelerating the payment, meaning that I have no intentions of keeping that for 30 years. My goal, and if you read that book Hold that I referred to, that book Hold, he said that most investors try to pay the houses off within 10 to 15 years. And the reason that they want to do that within 10 to 15, there's two reasons why, okay? Number one, you lose the depreciation asset, okay? This is a tax strategy piece. You can depreciate for 27 and a half years. So you take the purchase price of the home, you depreciate over 27 and a half years, divide it out, that's how you can use that number. Once you reach the maximum on that, you've lost all that depreciation value, there's nothing left there. Okay, but there's also the cash flow piece where you start maximizing that once you start doing when you have them paid off. And what they do is once they have those paid off, which they're trying to pay them off in the 10 to 15 year cycle, is they're no longer using their own personal cash to buy a house. The house is buying a house. Does that make sense? And so they can accelerate their investment schedule because of how they're doing it. Now, personally, I chose a 30-year because if times get tough, I can back it off. But if they're not tough, I am accelerating it. I'm like this last year, we made pretty decent money. I have to put a new heat pump into the house. So I decelerated what I was putting into the house, but that was a choice I made because I had some things. Now, when I do that, That adds to the depreciation model. Does that make sense? So now all of a sudden I put $8,000 into the house. I can do a hard one-time write-off, which doesn't necessarily, you have to talk to your CPA about this, okay? But the hard one-time write-off doesn't necessarily help me long-term, whereas taking that $8,000 HVAC system and adding it to the depreciation and then depreciating it over time extends my depreciation and helps me get more of it long-term. Does that make sense? So 15 years is the goal to pay them off, but that's not necessarily what everybody does. But I would highly encourage you, because you don't want to go into, I don't know what stage you're looking at, but for me, I want to get 15 rentals in the next 15 years. Okay, so one a year for the next 15 years. I don't want to have any debt going into retirement when it comes to that. And if I do have debt, it's leveraged, meaning that I'm not paying for it. Okay, so that's the plan. My plan is doing that. Now you can set up your own strategy for it, but 15 years is a pretty good acceptable cycle to try to pay it off. Whether you accelerate it or get a loan for it, that's entirely up to you.
Yeah, and kind of same thing on the down payment. Like if you can afford more than 20% or 25%, you still only typically stick to that just to save the cash for like the next purchase or for like repairs or anything that might come up.
That's a great question. I would say that it's probably worth your time to save a little, because you never know what the tenant's going to do. I didn't expect $12,000 worth of repairs. I really didn't. I expected them to be, the parents live in $2-3 million homes. I kind of expected them to treat the home kind of like their parents' home. Maybe not as nice because they're in college, but I expected just a hair better than $12,000 worth of repairs. It's worth your time to keep some of the money, because you just never know what you're going to run into with these people. And if you do have litigation costs to get it out, that's another cost that you don't. So it's always like, if you saw the model that I put up on the screen, this model, you can see it's leaving some income and reserves down here. Now you can choose whatever you want to do with that, but you need to keep part of it, because the roof is not going to last forever. In other words, don't spend it all.
So if we do put 20% down, how competitive would we be against someone? I mean, are there a lot of people putting 100% down, or are those more than 4%?
So you're actually right now in this market, and I only get to see the winning contracts, okay, because that's the only ones that turn into loans. Okay, so in today's market, there is competition, but it's not as heavy a competition as there was 2 years ago, when people felt like they were cutting half of their arm off to actually get something done. It's not that bad. There is still competition, and as the rates slide, you're going to see more of it. But right now, it depends on the part of town. If you're trying to buy in Wyndham, yeah, you're going to have a hard time. But if you're buying in some of the areas around here, it's not as hard as you think. And 20%, if you've got a competitive offer, 20% is not bad. Okay, I think you had it.
Yeah, and then I came up with another question in the meantime. How do you figure out how much to hold in reserve for a house?
That's a great question, and I don't know as I have a perfect answer for that. Other than when you go into the house, like what I did initially, I knew that I had to replace the HVAC system, and I had to replace the roof within 5 years. And so what I have done is I have put myself on a schedule to where I'm not spending even though I have a big kitty of reserves, I'm not using those reserves, because number one, my job takes care of me, so I don't necessarily have to dip that money to pull it out. So I'm saving that, because HVAC system is like $5,000 and a roof is going to be like $7,000. So I need to have at least that much at some point in time in the next 5 years in there to be able to handle it. Like last year, I had to take 2 trees out. 2 trees out. One tree was $1,400. Now it was a massive tree, but it was causing problems with the roof. And I knew that I could extend the life cycle of the roof if I took the tree out. So I made a decision to take that out and to improve it. And quite frankly, it helped a lot. But you have to kind of think, as you're looking at the property, when you're going into it, you kind of have to have a very critical eye as far as when you think you might have a life cycle of having to replace something.
Okay.
Okay.
Saving for each house for expected expenses, plus I think you said you had just general savings as needed in case there's another like $12,000 repair or something that's a surprise.
Yeah, I think it's all in the same pot for me. because there's a little bit of that you can't say for everything. You just have to gauge the best you can.
Okay.
It's not a perfect science when it comes to that. I wish it was, but even if it was, I'm not that good at it. So, all right. Any other thoughts?
I had one more question. Monopolize.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know there's homeowners insurance, there's rental, and there's renters insurance. But what about if you're owning the property, renting it out? How do you protect yourself against, or can you protect yourself against any of those?
You can get an umbrella policy, but that's about it. So the renter's insurance, just to clarify, renter's insurance doesn't protect you. It doesn't protect you. Now you want to be named in it because you want to make sure that if they cancel it, you know that they've canceled it, but it doesn't protect you. Because what it's doing is, I'll share a sad tale. My first tenant was a doctor. Love the doctor. They were moving in on Saturday. They actually prepaid 4 months of rent. Guess what happened on Friday night? Actually, no, not Friday night, Saturday morning. I walked into the house Thursday to check the house, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Check the house, make sure everything's in good shape. Okay, everything was in great shape. I walk into the house Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, they're showing up at 11. There's 3 inches of water on the entire first floor. The ice line to the refrigerator. If you get a house, take that doggone refrigerator out with the ice line and get rid of the ice line. I can't emphasize that enough. I've had 2 problems with ice lines, one in my personal home and once in this one. The ice line decided to rupture sometime between Thursday when I expected it and Saturday when I showed up. And that doggone thing is so tiny, I don't know how I got 3 inches of water in the entire first floor of this house. I do not know how I did it. But I opened the door and it started rushing out. $45,000 later in repairs. Luckily, the insurance covered it, except for the, whatever that is, deductible, I think they call it. Yeah. The renter's insurance helped them get set up in another house. It didn't protect me against anything. If they had been living in that property and their furniture had gotten ruined because they went on vacation and that ice line blew up, their renter's insurance covered them. But my homeowner's insurance policy covers me. So I didn't know that. I thought the renter was giving me some sort of coverage, but it's not like that.
And if you LLC, or if you buy as LLC, you get what?
It's a great question. So you can't buy Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae in an LLC. You have to buy it in your own name. But it doesn't mean you can't transfer it to an LLC. I'm about ready to transfer it to an LLC, and then I'm going to put it into a trust. So I'm going to have a couple different layers, because by putting it into an LLC, and there's a couple rules of thought with that, depending on how you want to handle it. I've had some people who put every single house into its own separate LLC. That's a lot of paperwork, just to let you know, but it does mitigate the risk. Okay, it's a ton of tax paperwork. Unless you're filing your own taxes, it's a tremendous amount of paperwork when you get to that point, because you have to file a separate tax filing for every LLC. Okay, and I had one guy that showed up. I am not kidding you. He had 15 LLCs, 15 different rentals. It's okay. You can do that if you want to, but I would encourage you, if you're going to do it down that way, to put a few LLCs in, or put like 2 or 3 LLCs and put several homes into the same LLC. Okay. And if you want a separate, I am not an attorney, so don't listen to a ton of this, but this is what I'm doing. Okay. I'm going to put it into an LLC, and then I just formed a trust. The LLC is going to go into the trust.
What's the benefit of putting that?
Taxes for my kids. Yeah. They can maintain and operate the LLC long after I'm gone without me being around. And not have to pay taxes on it because it's in a trust. Yeah.
Can you buy
in an LLC and then fix it up and refinance your personal name?
You can do that. It just has to transfer into your name. And if you are going to do it that way, if you're buying with the LLC, like with a hard money loan or something like that, you have to be the sole owner of that LLC in order to be able to do it that way. So you can't have partnerships unless they're going to be on the loan too.
Is there a minimum time limit before you can transfer from your, I guess, personal purchase to an LLC?
1 year.
So you have to have it as a personal residence and then transfer after 1 year.
Wait a minute. Let me make sure I understand your question. So you have a primary home?
No, so let's say to buy the investment property.
Okay. So if you're buying it as an investment property under Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, you need to wait a year before you transfer it. And here's the reason why. The reason why is because there is a due and payable clause in your contract when you sign it with the mortgage company. They can call the note if you put it into an LLC. But if you have 12-month track record of on-time payments, they're not going to. But they still can. Does that make sense? So just understand that is there. They can enforce that if they want to. Usually what they do is they say they're accelerating the note, meaning that they're going to fast forward the note, meaning it's due and payable tomorrow. Okay, but usually you have 30 days to refinance or get it out of the LLC or do something like that if that's the case. But most of the time, after a year, as long as you're making payments, they don't care.
What's the significance of wanting to call the note or forward if you're trying to do it, transfer it to an LLC prior to a year? Is it because they recognize that it's a money-making thing?
I don't know the nuances behind that. I really don't know the nuances behind it. I have had it happen, though, in a situation where a guy bought it as an owner-occupant. Do you guys remember the thing that happened with the district attorney in Maryland? And I'm going way over time. So if you guys need to go, please don't feel like you have to stay. But we're half an hour over. So if you feel like you need to leave, please feel free. But the district attorney in Maryland bought 2 homes in Orlando, near Disney. As owner-occupant, she put a minimal amount of money down. She didn't put 10%, she didn't put 20%, she put like 5%. She bought them as owner-occupant. The minute she closed on the properties, they went into Zillow Rentals and they went into a rental status. She gamed the system, but that's called mortgage fraud. She actually went to prison. Yeah, now not for very long, but the prison term is 10 years and it's $1 million in fines. And they could enforce it. They could enforce it. So you have to be, gaming the system is not wise. It's making sure that you adequately share what's happening and that it truly is, and that you're not setting yourself up for disaster later. Okay? After you've been for a year with this operating, you bought it as an investment. Okay? A lot of people move it into LLCs. It's pretty commonly recognized that the title is going to go into the LLC. The mortgage is always going to stay in your name. It's always going to stay in your name because you're the guarantor. If you want it in the LLC's name, now you're dealing with a commercial loan. It's just not residential. Now, most of the time, the commercial loans are much more expensive. They usually require 30 to 40% down. And they have a call. When I say call, that means that they're due and payable in full within 10 years. Or you have to refinance. Okay? And so you have to think through which one makes the most sense. And because it doesn't always work. The Freddie Fannie ones that I just showed you, those are the best terms for your first 10 rentals. After that, there's a whole nother range of stuff that you can do financially. There's pool loans, there's commercial loans, there's all sorts of ways that you can maximize your money. But not until and once you've got 10 houses, I think you're going to find that your cash flow is good enough to where you can accelerate and pay off homes and get yourself set up. Thanks for coming. All right. You can get yourself set up for long-term success that way and maybe even turn into your own bank. So if there's no questions. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
What is the interest rate for the traditional comes for investors?
So right now, 20% down is hanging out in the high sevens. 25% is hanging out in the mid sevens. And 15% down is unreasonable, so don't even try. Thanks for coming. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to turn this off. Hopefully I recorded everything and